Welcome to the Florida Homesteader Podcast, where we bring the pages of the magazine to life, sharing all the stories, the skills, and the spirit of homesteading across the Sunshine State. From backyard gardens to family farms and everything in between, we are here to inspire, encourage, and celebrate the Florida homesteading way of life. I'm Jamie Bateman, your host and editor-in-chief of the Florida Homesteader magazine, and we're so glad that you joined us today. So folks, go grab you some iced tea and let's jump into today's podcast chat. Hey, welcome back to the Florida Homesteader. My name is Jamie, and on the show today we have Dr. Jeff Saunders joining us again. If you are a subscriber to our magazine, you are familiar with his articles. He is going to be sharing with us in each issue different things that we can contribute to our own farms, our own homesteads, and just in general, great information that we can take back for our own animals if you happen to have any. And so today we are talking bird flu. This is going to be a good conversation, but Doc, thanks for joining us again on the show. I'm excited to have you on here.
Oh, you guys are welcome. I'm glad to be here, and I'm not shoveling snow somewhere up north, so I'm happy as I can be.
I know. Yeah. We'll take this weather any day.
Absolutely. That's why I live here.
Right?
Yeah.
So speaking of snow, one of the things that comes to mind in winter is the flu. Any kind of sickness that comes around, but I don't know how many people really understand or attribute the fact that even animals can get this. But specifically today, we're talking bird flu.
Yeah, and this is avian influenza or bird flu. And interestingly, because migratory birds carry this from north to south, this time of year we are on the major southern flyway. So we have all these wild birds, ducks, geese, etc., migrating into Florida, and they're carrying this disease. So we do see greater incidences during migratory patterns.
Very similar to with humans. When you travel, you carry things around, you get sick. Yeah. Birds do the same thing.
Yeah, they do. And we find that the main reservoir or holding tank, if you will, out in nature is these wild birds. And they're not sick. They don't get sick. They just act as carriers. So very similar to people that are walking around that really aren't sick, but they're still shedding the virus to other people.
All right. So that's interesting. These animals that are carrying it, they don't get sick, but they pass it to our animals here. Essentially. Right. How does that work? How does it go from a wild bird to a domesticated bird?
Sure. So the domesticated birds we're talking about that are affected are chickens, turkeys, ducks, and geese. Granted, they're usually raised in situations where there's more stress, but those are the birds that are affected. They actually get sick. Wild birds, with the exception of ducks, do not get sick. They carry it in a way, the same thing that happened with the COVID virus, that bats could carry it, but bats were not sick. So there's something in their immune system that allows them just to carry this virus and spread it, but not get sick. However, the wild ducks and wild geese do get sick. So they'll often find dead ducks, dead geese, and then when they do necropsies or autopsies, they'll find the virus in them, but not in the wild birds.
Interesting. So what does it do to our domesticated birds that get sick? I mean, obviously the other ones you said that you mentioned that it'll kill them, but what are we talking about as far as what do we need to look for? What does it do to our animals? That type of thing.
Sure. Well, there's different varieties. That's what makes this really such a major issue. The majority of the varieties of this avian influenza only cause very mild disease. Like in your backyard birds, you may see little bubbles or little drainage from their nose. Sometimes they have a little cough, which we call a snick in the birds, and they're okay. But the other varieties, which are called highly aggressive, kill the birds usually within 12 hours, 24 hours. You go out there to feed and everybody looks happy. You go back and you got dead birds. And it literally happens that fast. No warning signs, no nothing. So it's the aggressive varieties that are currently leading to all the headaches and people having to depopulate their birds. But it's similar to people, again, a lot of people, they get the flu and maybe they feel a little punk for a day or two and then they're back. Other people really get under the weather. And then if it happens to be one of the really, truly aggressive types, like the Spanish influenza back in 1918, a lot of people die. So there's a whole lot of different factors that come into play. But basically in your backyard birds, your chickens, turkeys, ducks, geese, what you're going to see is maybe the birds look a little ruffled. Their feathers may look a little ruffled. They may not be quite as happy to see you if you go out to the pen. And like I said, just get that little snick, and it's not much, and you usually don't think much about it. Lasts a day, and they're back to normal. And that's what we wish they would all do.
Yeah. Is there any type of treatment or anything like that that can be done?
Sure. At this point, the best treatment is prevention. It's a virus, so antibiotics don't do anything. We don't really have any true antiviral medications that you can use in any way, shape, or form, much less any that are legal to use in poultry. And we don't really have any vaccines. They're working on some experimental vaccines in Europe and here in the United States, but nothing's been released yet. The treatment, if you happen to have the very aggressive type, the only treatment is to depopulate the entire flock. That means if you have 10 birds in your backyard or you have 10 million in your barns, the whole flock goes. It's reportable. If we find influenza in one bird, we have to report it to both state and federal authorities, and they come on board and take care of everything. Sounds kind of rough, but that seems to be the only way to really control the spread. Normally what will happen too is they will test adjacent flocks, so neighbors down the road, any people that have had contact with your birds, and they'll test them. But it's kind of a rough way to go. It seems at this point to be the only way to prevent the virus from spreading like wildfire. It's just to quarantine the premises, depopulate the birds, disinfect, and then start over. So it's rough.
Yeah, that is rough. That hits hard, especially with the small farmers or any size farmer. That's going to hit hard to have to do that. And we saw that in the news recently, or I say we had a few months back, or maybe 6 months back. I don't know, time kind of evaporates.
In November of this year, they had to destroy 450,000 turkeys in Michigan, North Dakota, and South Dakota. There was like eight farms that were involved, and they had to take care of all the birds. If you go back from 2022 until November of this year, almost 21 million turkeys alone have been destroyed. That's 10% of the entire turkey population in the United States. So yeah, it's a lot. And it's still very active. Like I said, that was just last month.
Is it something that's transmittable to humans also? Or is it?
Yeah, so in the past, it does not seem to have been transmissible to people. However, what happens with this virus is it'll get in one animal, and then another virus, another cousin, think of it as multiple cousins of this virus. I say varieties, but think of it like cousins. So one cousin will get in an animal, then another cousin will get in, and those two cousins will join and produce a different variety of this virus that often is more aggressive. That's what happened most recently. And then those more aggressive ones can now jump to different species. So in 2024, we started finding it in dairy cows. Same virus that gets in birds, just like a cousin, a little offshoot of variety, started to get in dairy cows. Since that time, there's been, I think at this point, 70 people in the United States that have tested positive, been infected. Most of them either work on dairies that have the virus or work on poultry farms. For most people, it's like a little conjunctivitis, which is like a red, irritated eyes. You get some discharges. Again, it's inflammation, maybe a little fever, couple of days and you're over it. So it hasn't jumped into the general population, but as veterinarians, we have to be aware that possibility is now there. It has jumped into other species. This year, I think there was 53,000 elephant seals that died from the virus down in the South Atlantic, like Falkland Islands and stuff. It's jumped into penguins. In 25, we found it in cats. And the unfortunate thing about cats is can look like rabies. It can have a neurological or brain component. So most of the cats, like 88% of the cats that get it, die. If a cat is being tested for rabies, they're currently also testing it for this H5N1 influenza virus. Dairy cats that are around the cows or that drink in the raw milk, or that, cats catch birds, the wild birds, and eat it and get infected. They found that people can actually bring it, like if you're working on a dairy or a poultry farm, you can bring the virus home to your cats on your clothes if you don't decontaminate well. There's no evidence that cats can transmit it to people at this point, but of course we're all watching this thing happen as it's happening daily. Things are changing almost daily with it. So nobody's ready yet to call it any type of outbreak or epidemic, although the doomsday people are saying, next epidemic is here. We're all going to die from bird flu. Likely not, but it's just jumping around it's called reassortment, but it's almost like I said, cousins coming in and then reproducing. So now you get more cousins that are not good.
I think it was in our last podcast session. I don't know, you and I talk a lot, but I remember you sharing with me that vets are basically the gateway to a lot of the health concerns that affect humans also, because you see it coming through different varieties, whether it's coming from overseas, whether it's coming from up north, whether coming through bird flu, whether it's coming through another animal. I don't want to say it's crazy, but it's eye-opening to see that a lot of the stuff that we have comes through the offices of veterinary clinics.
Yeah, and we get to see it. We get to see it first, and that's a big part of our training. Veterinary medicine originally developed not to vaccinate dogs and cats, but it developed to protect the human food supply and the human race just from a disease like rabies. So these are diseases that can move from animals into humans. So veterinary medicine came about to protect humans initially. Most of what we are looking for is going to be in your production animals, your cattle, sheep, goats, llamas, chickens, birds, things like that. That's where it tends to show up, although as with the COVID virus, COVID-19, it started showing up in cats and dogs. So we would see those in the office as well. So yes, we're kind of the gatekeepers, which is kind of cool spot to be in, but a lot of pressure.
Yeah, it is a lot of, and like you said, it's all reportable. So when you see these things, you have to report it in, which just helps with the maintenance, or if you want to call it maintenance, maintaining the health, the overall health of this. I kind of want to unpack a little bit of what you shared, and thank you for doing that. So you mentioned a lot back in November with all these turkeys that were up north that had to be destroyed. Some of this, you said, also can be transmitted if you've got farmers working. So my question is, obviously we raise our own meat birds on our property for our personal use, our family. I'm thinking of these farmers that had all of these birds that were meant for consumption that now have to be destroyed. Could be kind of a silly question to ask, but what do they do with the birds? Are they consumable? But inspiring minds want to know, like, what do you do with all those birds?
No, at this point, there's no proof that like the eggs or the meat could transmit disease, but there's no proof that it can't. On the dairies, we've proved that pasteurized milk, if they pasteurize the milk, they cannot transmit the virus. Pasteurization kills it. However, for people who drink unpasteurized milk or raw milk, which a number of folks do, there is a chance it's going to be passed through the milk. So currently the birds have to be destroyed, and then they're depopulated, they're euthanized, and then they're destroyed. I think there is still some indemnity, and Congress has passed a new agricultural bill, so there is some indemnity to these farmers. However, they have to go through a complete disinfection process and then start all over from ground zero. So economically, they're losing money no matter what, even with the indemnity.
I just envisioned this hazmat suit guy walking in, and I feel like there was a movie like back in the 80s or 90s of this epidemic type of a thing that was carried by a monkey or something.
Yeah, the Andromeda strain by Michael Crichton.
Yeah,
there's the Andromeda strain.
Yeah,
yeah, that's what they do too. They're in hazmat suits because we don't know. the virus is airborne, and when you're destroying birds and you're disinfecting, you're creating, with your disinfecting solutions and stuff, you're creating droplets. So yeah, these guys are in hazmat suits. They're not taking any chances. So it looks like something from out of a movie when you walk on the set. And nobody likes to destroy, a million birds, but right now that's where it's at. It's tough.
That is hard.
Yeah.
Over like that, golly.
We went through it with dairy cattle in the 1950s with tuberculosis. If a cow tested positive for tuberculosis, you had to destroy the entire herd, whether you had 10 cows or 1,000 cows. And there was a government indemnity, but basically that shut down a number of dairies. We worked hard and we eventually eradicated tuberculosis from the United States. Our goal as veterinarians is to keep it out of the United States. So that's why we're so harsh on importing other animals. Tuberculosis sits right across our borders in Central America and South America. It's still there. We just eradicated it from the United States. So one of our goals, hopefully, would be to maybe eradicate this influenza from the United States. However, it's transmitted so easily that how are you going to keep all the birds from flying around? It's going to be tough, and we may have to hope for a vaccine or again herd immunity to start to build up. The hard thing about developing a vaccine is this virus changes so readily that by the time you get a vaccine out, the virus has shifted and that vaccine doesn't work well against.
It's like the flu vaccination. The flu vaccination that you get this year is because it was the strand that was the most prominent one the previous year.
Yes.
It's everything. Yes. You're never going to get.
That's exactly it.
Yeah, you're never going to get the right vaccination.
So, at this point, you try to keep your flock as stress-free as you can. You try to keep them strong, healthy with nutrition and things. Right now, a lot of the farms are going into total isolation to try to keep any visitors down, to try to keep people coming around. If they're having feed delivered, the feed trucks stop out at the front and the farmers bring their own trucks up and they offload the feed, take it back. On the big operations, it's kind of impractical to put netting all over your entire operation, but for small backyard flocks, putting netting up to keep the wild birds away from contacting your flock is good prevention. Although they're still going to have their droppings that'll fall from the air and stuff, but fine mesh over your birds, not letting them mingle with, like if there's ducks in your pond, wild ducks in the pond, you don't let them mingle with your ducks that you're raising. And you keep visitors to a minimum because certainly people can bring it on their boots, their clothing, anything they do. And if they have birds in their backyard and they want to come and see yours, it's kind of a no-no right now. You can send them pictures, but you just got to keep the contact as low as you can.
I remember when you visited our farm a while back, that was something that you had pointed out when we had farm visitors.
Yeah.
It's very rare that we have anyone going into our pastures or into our barns. But if they do, they had to have special kind of shoes on or specific shoes or shoe covers or something because I don't know where their feet have been.
Exactly. And so agritourism is a nice moneymaker, an infusion of money for a lot of operations right now, different, whether it's vegetables or beef or dairy or backyard farms, but it comes with a risk. So you got to have those little plastic booties, you have them all put on, and you have hand sanitizing stations, and it's stuff that you just throw away when you're done. You don't make everybody wear rubber boots and then scrub them and let the next guys wear them. So it's a matter of awareness now and realizing that the likelihood is low, but if it happens to be your farm, it's 100% because everything dies or they come in and depopulate it. So if you happen to get one of those really aggressive forms, so it's a real conundrum.
With humans, when flu season comes around or any type of season, when you don't do the vaccinations and you don't have that kind of stuff, but you try to take as many preventative measures as possible. So obviously you're pumping that vitamin C, you're doing your elderberry, you're doing all of the different things, drinking lots of water, bone broth, whatever it is that in your thought process of trying to keep your immune system strong. With birds in this situation, is there some form of herbal concept like feeding them Hazel or anything along. I know there's no vaccinations yet,
Yeah,
but obviously keeping people out of your chicken coop,
yeah.
keeping them away from wild animals that are flying in and out type of a thing, like you had mentioned. But is there anything in addition to what folks could be doing?
Sure. So, of course, we're all in our infancy with this, and we're learning, and we don't really know, again, 100% if it works on people. Does it work on birds? Does it work on cats? There's a lot of hearsay and there's a lot of anecdotal stuff, but if you just stick with the basics, you have your nutrition right, you have your sanitation right, you make sure there's plenty of ventilation, your birds aren't cooped up in a small thing with no windows or ventilation. Keep the air moving, control, your temperature. If it's going to be cold, these birds, you don't want them to get cold stress. So make sure you take care of those factors. So the husbandry and the nutrition go a long way into keeping your birds stress-free. Then I still use vitamin C. It's worked across the species that I've used it on. You can put it in their drinking water. There's powdered forms you can mix with the drinking water. I've used echinacea. Again, no hard, fast evidence I can show anybody that says, yes, it absolutely works, but it seems to work across other species. It's one of those things that can't hurt. Products like golden seal can actually have a downside. They can really be dangerous, but echinacea doesn't seem to have a downside. So again, you can use that like 2 weeks on and 2 weeks off. We seem to realize that you just shouldn't keep it in the water. So those are the basics that we have right now. We're all learning, and prevention truly is the best treatment at this point. But I wouldn't be adverse to putting vitamin C in their drinking water every day. But those things won't make up for poor sanitation or poor husbandry or poor feed. The other thing is, if you're purchasing birds at one of these wildlife auctions, probably a no-no. Or if you're buying birds from your neighbor's flock, the best you can do is put them in an isolated quarantine facility for 30 days before you introduce them into your personal group of birds. That's kind of the best you can do at this point.
We'd like to take a moment to thank one of our sponsors for this episode, Murray McMurray Hatchery. Now, whether you're starting your first backyard flock or expanding your homestead, Murray McMurray Hatchery is going to have everything that you're going to need. From healthy heritage breed chicks to trusted poultry supplies and expert advice that you can count on. For over a century, families across America have trusted McMurray to help their flocks flourish. One egg, one hatch, and one happy homesteader at a time. Go visit them at McMurrayHatchery.com today and discover why their tradition of quality is still hatching strong. Now back to our show.
Going back to the vitamin C, this might be another one of those silly questions. What kind of vitamin C? Like, is it same vitamin C that a human can take?
Yep, same vitamin C.
Okay.
And you can buy like 5-pound buckets, for like horses and stuff like that. Don't have any idea what the dosage is. Nobody's worked it out. I would say it's probably, in a human, it's 500 milligrams. So for bird, you're probably looking at like 10 to 20 milligrams, which is a few grains. So you would figure out, I got 10 birds, I need 10 milligrams per bird. That's 100 milligrams mixed in the water. These are the calculations we have. And you can go to all the holistic websites and they give you all the claims. But as far as true evidence-based medicine, none out there right now that I can give you. You can rely on people that have been doing it for 20 and 30 years. And in their situation, it may be helpful. In the next situation, it may not be, or it may be a different dose or a different level. So it's very unique to different situations. But as a blanket statement, I could probably say like 10 milligrams per bird per day would be a starting point. And again, vitamin C, because it's a water-soluble vitamin, it's not going to hurt anything. It'll just go out through the kidneys. But you can still overdo it. And that's unfortunately, that's where a lot of the problems in the United States are with medications, whether it's a real medication like an antibiotic or Tylenol or a holistic medication like vitamin C, or that is like American mindset is, well, 1 tablet's good, 2's probably great, 4 will knock the heck out of this. Well, not always.
You mentioned wild bird auctions. I'm obviously new, so the listeners, there's probably going to be some people out there listening when I say I've not heard of a wild bird auction. They're going to be like, "Oh my gosh, Jamie, do you live underneath a rock?"
If I said wild bird, I misspoke, but it's like there's an auction in Arcadia. I think it's every week, and you can buy chickens, goats, sheep, pigs, things like that. So it's an auction.
Okay.
Yeah, but not wild birds. I misspoke if I said that. But
Okay.
if you're going to be buying chickens or turkeys or your ducks, even from like the feed stores, I mean, there's a risk. But you still got to quarantine them, no matter where they come from. They need to be quarantined before they go into your group of birds, and so that means you have to handle your birds first, feed them, clean, do all that, and then handle the new birds last, and then get rid of everything or keep separate things for them, keep separate cleaning instruments and that. So you don't track anything back and forth. Everybody has a few outside cats they like to have around. Remember, the cats will catch and eat wild birds, so the cats can become infected, and then they can bring the virus into you. So just little things like that are naturally part of your farm. Everybody's got a couple of cats around to control the rodents.
Well, now, so when you were talking about where to buy the birds and everything, one of the things that I wrote down was at least buying them from a trusted source. But like you said, even these trusted sources, whether it's a farm store or a hatchery or someplace like that, you still want to quarantine them.
Yes, because they can still be infected, but not showing any signs.
Okay.
And then, of course, then you got the stress of moving them from one location to another, and the stress of introducing them into your group of birds. There's always a pecking order. There's a stress. So going through those stresses naturally reduces their immune system. So by keeping them separate, you're at least getting them through the stress of transportation and movement, letting them adjust to a new location, new water, new everything. You still got the stress of introducing them to your flock, but they can be carriers, especially if they have what they call low pathogenicity, which is the really not very aggressive virus. Maybe they were sick for a couple of days and they're better, but now they're shedding, or maybe they've got the virus and then they get stressed with the move and the virus starts to shed. So yeah, even from trusted sources, it's a wide open can out there. We just don't know where it's going to go.
Like I had mentioned before, we raise our own meat birds, and some of the hatcheries that we have purchased from, they offer vaccinations ahead of time.
Not for avian influenza. They can but we don't have it. They can vaccinate for Newcastle's disease. They can vaccinate for fowl cholera. And the other thing is there's like 5 respiratory viruses that birds get. And if you put all 5 birds together that had each one of these, you couldn't tell them apart. The only way you can tell them apart is through necropsy and isolating the viruses. So Newcastle, fowl cholera, fowl pox, avian influenza, they all look exactly the same on the bird, in the individual bird. So you can't say, well, that's probably not avian influenza. That's probably fowl cholera. Nope, can't say that. We can't tell them apart.
The only way of determining what it is through autopsy.
Yeah. So if you find a dead bird in your pen, it needs to be autopsy. You need to know what's going on fast. You need to know before it takes off. And on the big farms, those million bird farms and that, they do autopsies every day, trying to stay ahead of any type of infectious disease. Because some birds can just die from getting pecked on, pecking order. Some can die from getting a intestinal blockage or something. But you need to have them checked early rather than wait till half your flock's sick or dead, and then it's like, hey, too late now.
I've got my layers, and I have my ducks that are all together. They do not go outside of their little area. But I don't want to say it's common that we have a bird that passes away. It doesn't happen that often for us. But usually, like I think the most recent chicken that I had that passed away, it's been a while, she was an old chicken.
Yeah.
Chicken people will get this. People who have chickens, they know their chickens, and their chickens know them.
Absolutely.
You're out there 2 or 3 times a day with your chickens. You get to see them. So I never would have thought, though, to have my chicken who passed away of what I'm anticipating is old age because she was old, to have her autopsy for anything I didn't see any conditions or concerns or anything.
Yeah.
So is it
Okay.
those that are just mainly concerned? I can hear all the farmers out there who have just 5 to 10 birds, like, oh my gosh, I have to have my chickens autopsy.
Yeah.
Is it more so with those that you feel have more of a concern with, like you've seen them sick or you've seen them like that, or is it just every day?
Absolutely. No, absolutely. So you know your birds, like you said, you know them. The people that have a million birds don't know them. It's population. Totally different thing there. And they are always trying to stay one step ahead of anything infectious. You know your birds. They got names. You know them all. So you know this one was your oldest bird. Most likely she died from age. Or you know your birds again and you see the one that's getting picked on by everybody else. No, most likely. Or the cat got in or something, So for those that kind of obviously you don't have to send those to be autopsy.
Okay.
But if you're out there and you think, he's just not looking right, the feathers are a little ruffled, it's got this little snotty discharge, that's the one that if it passes, you probably should have it looked at.
Okay.
Or if all of a sudden you got 10 birds and you walk out there and half of them are dead, you need to have them checked. Those birds need to get sent because of how specialized it is. They need to get sent to Kissimmee. My suggestion is just put them on ice and drive to Kissimmee. You're worried about losing your whole flock of birds. I've had a number of people do that. They just pack them on ice, styrofoam ice chest, drive to Kissimmee. It's cheap. If you drive them there, they're getting them. They're not sitting on a loading dock somewhere waiting to be delivered, and you get an answer. But they're the only ones that have that specialized ability to test. Most of us, we could do a field necropsy, but we're going to have to send specimens in. I can say, well, it's respiratory disease. Look here, this bird's lungs, it's respiratory disease. That's all I can tell you. Or I can tell you, no, it was egg bound, or I can tell you that. And then there's no reason to test it. But if a veterinarian comes out or you bring the bird in and we do a necropsy and it's respiratory disease, if we don't send it in, we're failing you.
Who is in Kissimmee that you would take?
Sure. Kissimmee is our state diagnostic laboratory. They're part of the National Diagnostic Laboratory Network. So let's say they do get something really weird that they can't do there. They have access to the national disease laboratories that they can forward stuff onto for final diagnosis. If it's something weird from overseas or something. But for the most part, they have the ability to diagnose darn near anything. They have the special testing labs. You have to have requirements for quarantine and isolation in those facilities so you don't spread anything outside the lab. So yes, Kissimmee is the state diagnostic lab.
For those that are listening that are up in the Panhandle or Jacksonville or even down in Miami, getting to Kissimmee is not as easy.
Right.
So working through your local and trusted vet is the best option at that point.
And there is a diagnostic lab in Cottondale, which is up by Quincy, up in that area of the Panhandle, as well as right across the state line in Alabama, because they have a large poultry population in Alabama. Jacksonville, I think if you're up in that area, they use University of Georgia. They have an amazing diagnostic lab there. Your local veterinarian will know where best to send you. But for us in our area here in the heartland, it's Kissimmee.
It's Kissimmee. Okay. Very interesting. Well, I know we have a part 2 of this conversation that's coming up. So some of the stuff that you shared in our next issue, which is going to be the January-February issue, any last comments, cliffhangers, anything like that for the
Sure. Yeah, I will say this because it's a new concern. I just read the December issue of the American Veterinary Medical Journal. Just got it, and there's a whole 15-page spread on avian influenza. For people who are feeding their dogs and cats raw food, fresh frozen food, and frozen, this is a new kind of feeding fad, if you will, is these raw diets and that. There's a very good chance that influenza virus can be in those raw foods when you feed them, because there was a dog that was diagnosed in Georgia. It ate a dead duck and it got this avian influenza, which the dog survived, but it's capable of spreading it. So if you're feeding your dogs these raw foods, it's another reason to be really, really careful and aware. And there's a lot of people out there that are on this raw food kick for their dogs and cats, and there's a number of difficulties with it. But this is a new one that now we have to have a concern about. So just something that's out there because it's on the upswing, those raw food diets. So that just came out in the veterinary journal. So
when you say raw foods, you're talking like raw?
Yep.
Really?
So just a short digression.
Yeah.
The theory is that our dogs and wolves and coyotes grew up eating raw foods, okay, whatever they caught. That's true. The negative side is when we domesticate our dogs, they're not wolves anymore, no matter what you say. They are related, but they're not wolves. We have changed their systems by domestication. So now, but the people are still out there, is still feeding these raw foods. It's better than the diets produced by like Purina and Hills and those guys. Raw foods come with a number of issues, especially if the people and anybody in the house is immunocompromised. They're undergoing chemotherapy, anything that weakens their immune system, they're older, whatever. So feeding these raw foods and fresh frozen foods to begin with come with issues. Again, you can look through all the anecdotal stuff out there. And, I cured my dog of cancer feeding him raw beef hearts, maybe. But as far as evidence-based medicine, it's tough out there to find anything that warrants doing it consistently. So, and now we have this new threat of avian influenza. If any of these raw foods happen to have duck or chicken or turkey or goose as part of it, it can be an issue. Another thing we got to worry about. So anyway, I just leave people with that warning.
If they cook it, is that different?
Yes.
Okay.
Got to cook it. Yeah.
Gotta cook it, but
Yeah.
Because I know folks who use chicken gizzards and livers for dog food along with chicken meat, and they use the chicken feet for chew toys, but they cook it.
Should be cooked.
Okay.
It's the raw. And so the frozen foods are usually not cooked or cooked very little. So yeah, just like pasteurizing milk kills this virus, cooking the meat, kills the virus. Cooking it, yes. And I've had people through the years that, go and buy chicken necks and chicken gizzards and they cook them up in a stew and feed them. And I think if you're cooking them, you're probably pretty safe. But for those folks that are feeding the fresh raw foods and that refrigerated, there's other factors besides influenza, other diseases I can tell you about. But yeah, we'll leave that one.
That's another podcast.
Yeah.
And you've mentioned, and this might be another topic of conversation for another podcast, but you mentioned the raw milk concept. And so we are consumers of raw milk. And I know there's a lot of listeners who do, but in that situation, we know our farmers and we know their processes. I would say whether you're buying chickens or whatever you're doing, just know your farmer.
Yeah.
Know where you get it from.
Yep. And so far, none of the dairy farms in Florida have tested positive for avian influenza in their dairy cows. Okay. And the dairy cows is very mild. They're off for a day or two. You just look at them, maybe their milk production drops a couple of pounds a day, then they're back. So there's not really like sick cows are not dying. Some of the first tip off, but the virus is in their milk. We haven't found it in Florida yet. Remember, the Florida imports like 70 truckloads of milk a day from out of state to mix with our milk. So all that milk is pasteurized. Just beware of who you're buying from. Hopefully they keep a really good eye on their cows, or if they happen to find dead or sick cats on the dairy, they'll have them tested. Right. But their risk is probably minimal, but it's there. You just have to realize that. And it's cow's milk. We haven't found anything in goats or sheep. It's just right now it's cow's milk. So the risk is minimal. We haven't recognized it in Florida yet. More than likely, it's just a matter of time, or we haven't tested enough for it. But with us being on that migratory flyway where all the wild birds are, and certainly wild birds flock to the dairies because there's free food there. There's free food. It's probably a matter of time, honestly.
Well, we'll have to leave it at that and have folks tune in for the next chat that we have with you. And
yeah, I'll try to keep it upbeat. Yeah, hate to sound Debbie Downer, but it's just realities that we have to face.
It's the good realities of, well, I don't want to say it's good realities. It's realities of good information of helping us to be better farmers and homesteaders.
And that's what I hope to do. It's not just a joyride out there, and fun can turn into disaster really fast, as I've seen it happen.
Yeah.
Have fun. I want everybody to still have fun
Yeah.
doing this and enjoy it and enjoy your animals and give them their nicknames and stuff, but realize that there is a possible danger that comes along with it.
Yeah. You want to know, you want to go into this fully prepared and ready as you can be.
Yeah.
On how do you best take care of those animals that God has given you. So, yeah. All right. Well, if anyone has any questions for Doc, he has said this before. He's welcoming those in. You can send those to us through our website with the Florida Homesteader. We'll be sure to pass those along to Doc. And one of these days, I think we may even throw in some Q&A. So if you have questions, we'll bring them up to him and put those on the podcast. It'll be a fun time for us. But until then, Doc, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Miss Jamie. It's always fun, and I hope everybody out there has a great Christmas season. And above all, remember, take a few minutes to reflect on what Christmas really means.
Absolutely.
What the gift really is.
Yep, absolutely. Amen to that.
Okay, all right. Thanks, Miss Jamie.
Right.
Take care.
Thank you.
That's what homesteading in Florida means, and that's the story that we're proud to share in the Florida Homesteader. Thank you so much for joining us today. Be sure to subscribe to our channel, share this episode with a friend, leave us a rating, and check out our magazine, the blog, and our YouTube channel for even more Florida homestead inspiration. Until next time, keep growing, keep preserving, and keep the homesteading spirit alive. Y'all come back now.